Hello, everyone. My name is Gabriel Ellis, and this is another episode of the Curious Mind podcast. I have done in the past a different couple of things. The last weeks, I have uploaded episodes of an online therapy that I've done with a client to give you an idea of how, if you don't have experience with therapy, how actual therapy might look like and how the development in therapy can look like. And another focus of mine is to try to have interesting conversations with guests, sometimes about books, sometimes about specific topics. And today I have the pleasure to talk to a colleague friend of mine, Joachim Wehnelt. Joachim is a systemic Gestalt therapist. This is the official title, but apart from that, he's having interesting views, interesting concepts, and does overall an interesting work with clients. So we know each other from work, and so thinking about who else I could talk to, interview, Joachim came to my mind, and I wanted to take the opportunity to introduce him also and his work to my audience. Hello, Joachim.
Hi, Gabriel. Thank you for having me here.
It's the first time that we speak in English, funnily. Usually we converse in German, so Joachim is German native, works internationally as well, works with in-person clients, but also online. And today, just because I speak to an audience that is mostly international, we switch to English. Yes, so what is interesting about you and your work to me is that you seem to have over time, you have developed perspectives and ideas that I do not come across very often when I read or talk with colleagues, therapist colleagues. Your kind of the very basic background of Gestalt and systemic are not that unique. These are quite established schools. So what is more interesting is, I think, what comes on top of that. There are two areas that I would like to highlight, and then we'll see which we would like to discuss more in our conversation. One is that you are interested in working with men specifically, and you have created an online community where men can exchange and self-develop. It's called Brothers of Arm, Brothers of Heart, right? And this is an online community, as far as I understood, is changing its composition. So it's not a fixed group, but people can join. And maybe you can start by describing a little bit about the context. How does this work form? Who can participate? And how did you start with this interest and with this specific kind of work, working online with men?
Yeah, this is actually really some special interest for me to work with men. And first of all, it was always an interest of mine for my own personal development in the beginning. But then I found also in the work that many times I believe that men are not really met in psychotherapy as men, many times.
Hmm.
My experience is that many times we tend to believe, it seems, that the soul does not have a gender, so to speak. And maybe this is true, I don't know, but what I believe is true is that every person has a different experience if this person has a male body or a female body. I believe a person with a female body working through the world has different experiences with the world and with herself than a person with a male body working in the world, walking through the world, and having different experiences with that.
Hmm.
And I think we many times don't address that. But this is, I believe, a crucial topic for many, even if it might be unconscious, but it has an effect. And from this assumption, I started to specialize on working with men. And the Brothers of Heart are online circles. They are going on for years now, but actually every man can join just for one cycle. That the cycle is about 10 times, and it's normally 10 weeks. And we meet for 2 hours every week. And most of the times there is a topic. For example, lately it's the topic of ancestral work. So what I call like the roots of man. What does it mean for a man to have these ancestors that he has? So that is one area that I'm specifying on. And the chance is that the man can relate to the ancestors in a different way that he might have had before. And in that, he also connects with other men to share experiences. And my experience is that as soon as someone is not only working one-on-one, which is beautiful, but if there is a reflection with other men, it really deepens the work.
Now, it's interesting that you started your description by saying that often men in a therapeutic or self-development context are not perceived as men. This is quite asymmetrical because I think it's relatively common that women have found a way to address each other in therapeutic or self-development or tantric contexts, for example, as women, and to develop that. So there is something obvious in this asymmetry. I think people are aware that there are many more possibilities for women to develop themselves as women. Why do you think there is such a lack in possibilities and services for men?
Well, that's an interesting question. And I wonder, do we want to become aware that we are men? Because many times, and this is what we hear from women, at least I hear it, it's the way we construct our society is that with an underlying assumption that this society is for men. But this is covered many times. Many times we say, oh, this is just a bank, this is just a hotel, this is just a school. Yeah. But the structure we are building it with is with the assumption that this is for men, from men, and maybe there can also, some women can join there. So the work would be to say, okay, let's uncover that. Let's see what is actually our intention here. How do we build that? What are our assumptions? But then we as men would need to own that there are lots of privileges we have, for example, that are covered in this uncovered construction of society. And then it's not so nice sometimes. We have to acknowledge that we get more money many times for our work. We have to acknowledge that it's safe for us to walk the streets at 11 p.m. at night. And well, then it would be a little bit uncomfortable maybe. And then many men say, we don't want to know about it so much. So when it becomes about self-awareness and therapeutic work, this needs to be addressed. And I think this is one, when you ask this question, why is this so asymmetric in our work? I think this is part of it. Do we really want to become aware that we are men and how we look at the world and how we co-construct the world.
Hmm. Yeah, so that's quite interesting because what follows from that is that if we take this approach and we start to reflect with our male clients their experience and their world, uh, it necessarily and very quickly goes to a societal and social dimension. So that interestingly, even though we aim at a very private internal reflection, right, on something that touches us as men every day, every moment, and so on, that it refers automatically to a big picture,
Right.
right? And this is, again, something that might not be self-evident or normal in therapeutic contexts.
Exactly. And I think it's beautiful what you're looking at and how you point to it, because I believe that many men have quite a contrary experience with themselves.
Hmm.
I believe many men have an experience of feeling alone in the world,
Hmm.
feeling lonely, feeling disconnected. Some are aware of it, some not. But for many men, even if they feel good about themselves, I think there is a sense of, I can do it alone. And there's a beauty in that,
Hmm.
but there's also a shadow in that. So in contrast to this, what I shared before about the uncovered structure, the individual experience for many men is, oh, I'm alone with the world and I can make my way through the world.
Yes.
But this also needs to be uncovered. Why is that? Where is this coming from? Where is this need coming from to be alone or to feel
Hmm.
alone or to make it alone? And of course, both the collective and the most personal, the covered collective and the covered personal are connected.
Yeah.
And when we start to do our work, all of a sudden, oh, okay, so then there needs to be an awareness. Oh, yeah, I feel like I'm a lone wolf here in the world.
Yes.
Where is this coming from? I like to have friends. Why did I not have friends for a long time now, for example? So all this needs to, there's a numbness. There's a lot of numbness on the personal and the collective level. And all this wants to become aware, become alive. And this is a beautiful work, but sometimes it's also painful.
Hmm. Yes. Which leads me to another observation and question. We as therapists, we see patterns, right? People come individually, they don't know each other. And yet, I think for many of us, a normal experience is that we see certain topics and issues to be repeating themselves. At the same time, the individuals feel that they are unique and have this specific issue on their own. A good friend of mine, who also appeared on a previous episode, she is working a lot with women, not exclusively, and she has the same observation. She works with women, and women come with their issues in self-identity and body issues, relationship issues, and they perceive themselves as if only they have this issue.
Mhm.
And for us, this contrast is so stark because, I often find myself in a situation that wants to say, don't you know that so many people have a very similar issue? So again, we have the connection between the individual suffering of a
Right.
person and what we see is partly a societal level of that.
Well, yeah, and I believe, uh, I think it's true what you say, and I believe that this is an unconscious benefit of feeling alone.
How is that?
Because my assumption is to feel alone or to go alone through the world is not so nice. We are social beings. It's my
Yes.
assumption, my approach in the work. So how can I even sustain that? There must be some benefit
Hmm.
in that. And one benefit is I'm unique in my, and making myself, like kind of covering myself and not connecting so much,
Mm.
gives me as a maybe as a benefit the feeling, oh, my problems are unique. At least I'm special in that.
Yes.
And when I feel like when I hear, oh, you have the same problem, oh, there's also like for the ego, there's a kind of deflating many times. It's like, oh, okay, I'm not so
Mm-hmm.
special with my problem here. It's not so. But then another experience might kick in, because then there is, oh, I'm connected with you in my trouble, in my struggle. And then there is a different way of a different perspective even to the world. And then my uniqueness maybe does not need to come from my unique perspective on suffering,
Mm.
but uniqueness comes more from a creative part, from a creative essence, from a contribution to life. So that's, of
Yes.
course, a totally different pathway.
Yes. Before we come to a concrete description, and maybe you can give us some hints from the men's circle, the brothers of heart. Um, you described before that part of the male experience in our society is a certain numbness, a numbness towards how many of the institutions that we have crafted serve maybe a male perspective more than a female perspective. And also, I guess it translates, at least this is my experience, to a certain numbness of many men of how they perceive themselves, how they feel themselves.
Mhm.
And what you just said reminded me of that maybe one of the benefits of being alone might be that in spite of the numbness that I feel I have in this world of myself, that I still can feel myself as unique, or at least I can give myself the title of being unique, even though I don't feel myself as a unique individual.
Right. Exactly. That's what I mean. Like, this is exactly when we talk about feeling unique, feeling lonely. Of course, we touch the topic of narcissism. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and my perspective on that is, I don't like so much to use this term, because basically I believe the whole society is narcissistic. So
Yes.
it's hard to even differentiate.
Yes.
So that's a structural collective topic, I believe. So, but again, what if we stay with this idea of narcissism? What is the benefit of that? And when I feel like, when I translate it and when I try to explain it to someone who has not big of a experience of therapy, what is that? Well, for me, narcissism is a way of constructing a facade.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's a facade, and I make you believe that I'm the perfect guy. That's
Yes.
one way of creating it. And then, of course, there is this loneliness inside. But actually, and this is exactly what I meant and what you point to, is, but in this facade, at least I have the sense of, this is me.
Mm-hmm.
This is my facade.
Mm-hmm.
This is how I construct it. This is the
Yeah.
way I put it together, and the way I am trying to make believe others that I am perfect, for example, there is a lot of creativity in that.
Mm-hmm.
Right? To be the biggest sports guy, to be the biggest business guy, there's a lot of creativity in that, and there's a lot of shadow in that. But again, we need to look at the benefits of our patterns. Otherwise, we will never get through them or get to any other pathways, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
Because why should we do it if it's so bad to be narcissistic?
Yes. Yes. It's obviously it serves a very fundamental
Yes,
function. Right.
right.
Okay, so this is, I think we just scratched the conceptual part of it. It's obviously quite complex, and what is the most fascinating and what is the most lacking, maybe nowadays especially, is this connection of something that looks like an intimate individual experience, and that is connected with a systemic, with a structural, with a societal level. And this comes together when we start to reflect on being man, being woman, being female. So how does that translate in the circles that you moderate, that you guide? We have those fancy concepts on the one hand. How does it show? What are some typical things, problems, hesitations, questions that men who join, and maybe the most interesting for me are men who don't have a vast therapeutic background, but come driven through a curiosity and are innocent in that sense. What are your experiences there? What are some repeating types or questions that come up?
Well, for me, the revolution of creating a circle, an online circle, is the circle. That's the revolution already. Because for many men, when they come in for the first time, and even if it's just online and we see all the little tiles on our screens, but there is, for many men, there is like, they touch all of a sudden something that they might not be aware of in the first place. That is like, oh, how do I feel when I come into a circle of men? What's being touched here? How safe do I feel? How much of a man do I feel with other men? And there might be so many times for men, they need to kind of relax into the possibility of, yeah, I'm here, I am part of a circle. This many times needs a lot of time to become aware of, oh yeah, I'm actually part of this here. I am contributing in my ways. I'm being part of the circle by, and when you ask about how does it work, like the basic premise is you are in a circle and you share yourself, period.
Yeah.
And that's already very exciting. So we have already a community, a circle, and my feelings towards that. And then I'm being asked to share. And then we are again, many men are confronted with this topic of, yeah, being a man, all these questions of how should I be as a man? Like there's this ongoing question. I believe I knew it for myself being a boy, like, okay, at some point I realized, oh, at some point I am supposed to be like my dad, but how do I get there? And what does it mean? And who can support me in that? Who can show me what it is to be a man? Many men have the experience, nobody shows them. And so there is a total insecurity and incoherence in their experience, and they try to figure out, okay, so in this film, the man acts like this, so this seems to be manly. Okay, so let's take this. And there's some advertisement, let's take this. So we build our concept of being a man. And this needs to be, I believe, uncovered. This needs to be deconstructed.
Yes.
So that's
So,
the first step.
So as I understand you, the system doesn't know exactly how to behave because it's an unusual environment. So this is relatively normal. I assume what would be a healthy reaction would be to be aware of that and to allow oneself to sink into this insecurity. Or at least to see myself grasping for hints of performance. That would also be healthy because then I can relate to it, I can communicate it, I can address it. Is that a big struggle for the participants? How long does it take for them to break through the shell of performance or the intuition to want to perform?
Well, it's I feel joy when you say that you say, oh, well, it would be healthy to feel the insecurity, to sink into that, or to feel, oh, I'm performing now. This needs quite a while, and
Mm.
not for all, for some. And I believe what needs to be established is I start to kind of detach myself from myself. Like many times in the beginning, well, this is me. What are you talking about? Me is me. And then what we do in the work is that we allow more and more voices to come. Like when I allow myself to voice my fear, I voice it. If you have the capacity to receive me in that, then I get the experience, oh, my fear can be here in the space. You receive me. And all of a sudden, there's more than fear. There is also you. And with you, I also become aware of myself having fear. So all of a sudden, there is a process of detachment, not because I'm not feeling, I'm not going away from the feeling, but I become aware. There's a kind of process of the empathetic witness of myself. I become aware of myself. All of a sudden, we have two, I and me. And then it's like, oh, now I have a feeling, not I am the feeling. This is the beginning. I believe this is in our, when we are babies, when we are a child, I am the feeling. I am anger. There's nothing else.
Yeah.
And then in the development, I have anger. And that's already bingo. Then we are already in a different game.
Yes. How does that translate into a group dynamic? So one thing that I would assume is as long as I'm caught up in my self-judgment, which is the process that you described, how should I perform? What is a good me? What is a bad me? And so on. As long as I'm in this trap of judgment, judging myself, I think it's relatively easy to be stuck also in judging others, which would then lead to a conflict. How do conflicts in this group look like, and how do you attempt to dissolve them?
Well, again, I would like when you start about like this judgment, like again, what do I need a judgment for? What's the benefit? And I believe many men and maybe also women, the benefit of judging is I try to find my place in the world.
Yeah.
And I judge that you are bad and you are good, and I put myself to the good guys, then I have my place and I can relax.
Yeah.
I think this is the benefit. So, but that's of course
Allegedly, that's the fantasy, right? That I can relax if I'm on the good
side. So there's a shadow to it, I have to admit, right?
Yeah.
So, but to get through that, again, I need to become aware of it, as you say. And when I just take the need, I want to find my place in the world. So then it's when I feel that need, and I say, okay, and what do I need to feel a place in the world? Then, when I really am honest, I might land in the perspective, oh, I just want to be like I am, basically. And we, of course, touch the constructions of being a man. But, and this is my core question when you ask about, well, how is it complete? My core question in the work, sometimes I name it, sometimes it's an underlying question that I'm working with is, what is it to be a man for you? And this sometimes is even like, oh, what are you talking about? But then it's like, okay, so there is an individual in the whole mass of masculinity. All of a sudden, I can be I just like, I can have fear, I can have anger, I can have shame, I can have joy. Oh, that's interesting. And then we come to a true uniqueness that does not need so much the facade anymore.
Hmm.
And yes, and this pathway, you talk about conflict, leads also sometimes to through conflict, of course. And so I have a good example. Like just last night, we had a circle, and one man would be very critical, to say the least, about the corona measurements we are
Mm-hmm.
having in Germany. And he was very critical about it. And he brought this in. And also really like dismissing for himself to be vaccinated. And then it turns out another man just has been vaccinated.
Hmm.
And how? So that's quite potential for conflict. Now we can see it in our society. So, but the invitation for conflict was not taken. Because why? What happened? The man who was critical, who was skeptic, who was dismissing this possibility of vaccination, would express his feelings about it. He would say, I am afraid that this is becoming a tyranny. I am afraid that
Hmm.
the structures are overtaking. And this touches an old fear in me, because when I was going into communities, school, company, whatever, I needed to change and needed not to be like I am. And this touches a fear, and I'm angry about that.
Yeah.
So that's the invitation to listen. That's the invitation to, okay, this is being touched here through the corona topic, but now you tell me about your fear, you tell me about your anger that is being touched, and then I can be with you, regardless if I'm vaccinated or not.
Yes.
So we hear the invitation for conflict, but there's also a possibility for invitation of meeting each other. And this is the invitation that I'm having and that I'm giving in the circles. The most important tool is to listen.
Hmm.
To listen to myself, to my feelings, to what I am experiencing now, but also to listen to another man.
Okay, let me assume a critical position here and ask, why is that necessary? Because that starts to sound to me like psychological, stretching. Like when I say vaccinations are bad, it already implies that I'm somehow uncomfortable about it. Why do I have to say on top of my conviction that vaccination is bad, that it comes from an uncertainty, a fear, some biographical thing? That's all, psychobabble. Like, why do I have to go to this weird level of talking about my feelings and so on? Doesn't everybody understand automatically that it comes from such a level?
Well, if I look at our conversation in society, it seems not to be so easy to hear the underlying feelings or
Hmm.
needs. And I think it's actually, that's a crucial part of the work. And because many times, and this is, I like it that you are critical here, because many times I believe we use topics. It can be the vaccination, it can be anything else. We use topics to, when I take this here and I offer for you this topic, I have a stick here.
Hmm.
I'm going to take my stick. And then you might say no or yes. But many times this is an offer to come into a real conversation. Many times it's not about that, what I'm offering. And many men have learned, my experience in, like, I love soccer games. I love, but many times when I experience group of men there needs to be some topic to be able to connect with each other. The topic of football, topic of politics.
So something impersonal?
Impersonal.
Uh-huh.
Something objective. I have a beer, you have a beer, klong, prost. We meet here. We meet, we have a beer.
Yeah.
That's the idea. And what it reveals to me, and nothing against beer, nothing against soccer, but what it shows to me is the need for many men to become objective and to use objects. Why? What's the benefit of that? The benefit is this gives me some sense of safety. When we talk about my favorite soccer team, we can talk about the players, there's a sense of safety. And when we struggle about why is Cristiano Ronaldo the biggest guy in the world or not, we can be intimate by fighting. And it's beautiful to talk about it, but then I can still hide my most personal, my most intimate feelings. And I think we need to open this. We don't need to dismiss it. We can still watch soccer games, and we want to be available for something else, I believe.
Yes. Yes. So that's an interesting aspect of those kind of the topic talk, right? Of talking about the world, about politics, about soccer, all these things. I wonder if there's another level to that, which is when I express my conviction, right? Vaccinations are bad, or vaccinations are good. A conviction is an expression about something in the world, right? And it can be true or false. Which means that basically when I say that, I'm looking for confirmation. And when you listen to me, when I address you with my conviction, that I'm basically asking you to confirm my view. And that I automatically bring you in the position of confirming or dismissing what I hold as true. In contrast to that, when I talk about my experience, that I'm afraid of something, or I'm hesitant, or I'm insecure, or happy, or whatever it is, there is no debate about that. There is, unless we are overly in a psychological, context where we doubt what is an authentic experience and so on in therapy. But in a normal conversation, right, when I add to my statement that I don't like vaccinations, and I add to that because I feel insecure, then I express something that cannot be really doubted. It's people will say, well, your conclusion is wrong. You have to rethink your conclusion that vaccinations are good or bad, but I give you that, you feel insecure. So the invitation that I give out when I additionally express my unique experience is that of relatability, because I express something that cannot be taken away from me usually. So for me, this is an additional aspect of why there's such a big contrast between just expressing a conviction that I have, because it invites confirmation, is afraid of dismissal, versus to express a unique experience, an emotional experience, or an otherwise cognitive experience that I have. So I would very much also emphasize or confirm your experience that it makes a huge difference if people express it.
Yeah, and I also want to acknowledge we need to have these discussions, the political discussions, the discussions about society. How do we want to go about the pandemic?
Yeah.
How do we, and I believe this is the beauty that we are experiencing in these times. I believe that we are wrestling how we want to live as a community, as a global community. How do we want to live? What's important? Basically, there's a war of values.
Yes.
And I honor that. And I want us to have these discussions. But many times, and this is also reflecting to what you say, I'm connecting here with this, what you are expressing, because many times when I have the strong position against or whatever, we can have that, but many times there is an emotional underlying thing creeping in. This makes why I believe this is good or bad.
Yeah.
And then this is also fine, but when I'm not aware of that, I come from a place that is not mature. And I believe on our journey of the soul, this needs to collapse. Our immature positions need to collapse. Why? Because then I land in my truth and say, oh, wait a second. There was an old anger here coming in. This is why I had this position. Let me take care of my anger. When I do that, I am in myself in a different place, in a more mature. What does it mean, mature? I own my feelings. When I do that, then there is a detachment again from my old feeling and my position. And then I can totally relate to what's happening in the world in a different way. Then I can still say no to this or to that, but I come from a different place and I will be heard in a way different aspect from many other people, because we all know if someone tells us something that is really worthwhile listening, we listen. And if someone is coming from an immature place, we say, I hear you, it's not really working.
Yes.
So to become a really political man or woman, I need to take care of my feelings to be really clear in my message.
Now you described again things that would contribute to a maturity in the social discussion, but you experience it in the microcosm of your circle, right? The Brothers of Heart.
Yeah.
So you said that it is a cycle of 10 meetings usually. What are your experiences of the dynamics? How many sessions, how many meetings does it take so that a group of individuals becomes a circle that relates to each other, where the performances go down, where people can address more and more of the emotional undercurrent, as you described, so that there is in front of your eyes and guided by topics and guided by moderation, that there is a maturity, a maturing going on? How would you describe this cycle and the development?
Well, I have really different experiences. There's a beauty sometimes in when the circle, when the men are coming from one culture, for example, from Germany, because then there is a coherence already, a cultural coherence, and this sometimes, and there's of course the language, and this sometimes allows men to relax. And then it goes the wave of intimacy, of coming closer or being farther away, is kind of a little bit smoother. When we have a mix of international coming from all different places, the beauty there is, first of all, there might be more of a challenge. Or what does this American man talk about? Because for me, it's quite clear that the perspectives on masculinity are really different in the US than in Europe. So I need to start to relate and kind of feel that. But this might really help me to become more aware of my own bubble. So this might be experienced as a challenge, but then it's also, there's a beauty, and the invitation is to feel more, oh, and what does, apart from collective and cultural perspectives, what is actually connecting us? So that's also a beauty. And then it depends on the man, what's more for him. Like, is it more needed to have this cultural coherence in the beginning, or is it more opening if there are intentions? So there's a difference, I believe.
Yes. And yet there is also you focused on the individual experience. There is also the level of the group dynamic. So just connecting to what you said in the beginning, that when men enter the circle, often they try to find out what is good behavior here, what is bad behavior here. I guess that with time, when I, as an individual, perceive that more and more men connect in a certain way to each other and to themselves, that it gives me permission to do something similar and make me more courageous to attempt that. So I wonder if you know those, if you have experienced those points where the atmosphere seems to switch into a different mode, when before there was individualism, hesitation, performance, and so on, and then it seems to switch into, oh, now they get it, and now there is a group flow of people who can relate to each other.
I start again with the individual, but then I hear your question about the group dynamics. When one individual, there's some kind of a rule there. When one individual really becomes vulnerable, expresses himself vulnerably from the heart, many times this is an opening. And for some men, it's scary, disgusting, and they don't like it.
Yeah.
So again, there are some kind of, there's a sense of coherence again that might be applying there, but it's not for all. And it depends really on the circle, on the group, if this is happening or not. What I can say as a rule, maybe, as an experience, it depends a lot how I bring myself in or not. Also.
You as the moderator?
As the moderator.
Yes.
Because I'm not only the moderator, and this is a balance for me in the work.
I see.
Because I experience, like, when I offer a circle of men and say, listen, we want to find out what kind of man we are. And if I then would say, but you will never know who I am. I'm a white screen here for you. You just share. This doesn't work.
Yes. So you as Joachim, as a man in this group, need to bring yourself in.
Yes. And I need, and this is a balance. It's sometimes delicate. I always want to make sure that it's not about me. The circle is about the man. And that it's, that this circle is really working for each man also needs me to become part of it in some sense. That I need to, I believe the need for many men is, let me feel you. Hey, what kind of man are you? And they want to know it from the participants. They want to also know it from me. They sometimes test me and say, hey, when I give you this jab, do you still keep standing here or not? There needs to be this kind of, okay, I need to feel your power. I need to feel your guts. And that's fine. That's part of the work. It needs to happen. Otherwise, it's kind of not really embodied and it's not really landing.
Yes.
So that's what I can share from my experience. This is why when I find, like, what is my role, I consider myself, well, you could say I'm the facilitator, moderator, and so on.
Yes.
But I express it like I'm the guardian.
Mm-hmm.
I'm the guardian who needs to see where is every man, but the man also need to see me.
Mm-hmm.
It's both ways.
Yes. Maybe my last question about this topic. You also work with individual clients. How do you integrate this experience and this perspective that you have on men in society, men with themselves? How do you integrate it in your individual work?
Well, the entry gate always is, of course, the individual who comes and what he brings. What I feel is important many times is to give a reflection, for example, that this feeling that this man brings or this experience is maybe not only his struggle. This
Mm-hmm.
might be helpful at some point. And so my role sometimes is to give a perspective. Also, I believe the whole journey of the soul, a strong part of it is to come from separation to differentiation.
Mm.
So many men come from a place of separation, feeling separated from their roots, from their families, from society, from themselves. And then there needs to be a journey, I believe. And my part of it is how you're feeling now. Yeah, it's very individual, but maybe this is not only your feeling you have, but maybe you experience this also from your family. And then
Yeah.
there is, okay, yeah, that's maybe true. And
Mm-hmm.
then there's also connection maybe to the collective. And then there is starts to be more of a differentiating.
Mm-hmm.
My overwhelm with a feeling is not just me having that fear, whatever it is, or anger, but it's also for my dad. And this already many men relaxes them. It's like, okay, it's not just mine, it's not my heavy duty only to take that. I can
Yeah.
leave this to my dad. And I feel myself more being individuated and in that sense differentiated from the parents or the family. And this gives more self-awareness in a good sense. This is
Mm-hmm.
one way of kind of allowing this into
And
the world.
also, I guess it allows a different kind of integration, right? So not just among the community of
Right.
men today and not just in the society, but also an integration into my ancestral family.
Exactly. Yes. To become aware that there's a beautiful book about this. It didn't start with you.
Hmm.
And to become aware, it didn't start with me.
Hmm.
Okay, but it can end with me.
Hmm.
This intergenerational pattern that I might have been contributed to myself in the experience, yeah, I experienced most personally some, for example, emotional violence,
Hmm.
but it didn't start with my dad, with my grandfather. Yeah, it can end with me by taking care of it.
Yes. I have a last question that is connected to that. We focused on men in this conversation. Um, I don't know actually, but I assume that you also work with women, and you have such an interesting set of experiences through the men circle and this general interest in the topic. And for decades already, it's a widely publicized um, uh, issue of not understanding each other, right? That men don't understand women, women don't understand men. A lot of stand-up comedy is about that topic. It's very repetitive in that sense. Uh, does the opportunity come up if and when you work with women to let them partake in this experience and to help them to get some insight when it's about relationship issues or anything concerning men, that they can benefit from this specific set of interests that you have?
Well, there's two ways actually. One way is that I offer also circles on what I call fruits of the roots, about the ancestral work that what we see in the background. So this is one part. The other part is, I believe so thank you for the question, because it's really crucial for me to include woman and the feminine also in the work with men, first of all. To not exclude, because some man circles exclude women,
Yes.
and I don't think this is right.
Mm-hmm.
So that's important for me, but your question refers to something else. The women can benefit when I work with my partner. My partner, Juliana, we offer together this workshop called Wild Peace. And we had this beautiful workshop, for example, in Israel, when we offered a new way of relating. She and I offer that. And then part of it is to work separately with men and women, and then to create a new connection, a new way of connecting with each other. So that's, of course, one way of really letting this work, come into this conversation with women.
Joachim, thank you so much for your time and for this conversation. I would be interested to have another conversation exactly about that aspect, the ancestral work that you do. We focused on the work with men today. Let's see if that comes to fruition. But certainly I will leave some links below, both to your site, to the work with your partner, Juliana, and I guess people will find all the information necessary about both Brothers of Hearts and Fruits of the Roots. And I'm very grateful for the open exchange that we have, and additionally to the conversations that we have had in the past, where I got some glimpses about your work. I got more complete, not complete, but at least more information, so that I can picture more about the specific work that you do.
So thank you for this conversation. I really enjoyed it. Thank you for this opportunity.